Imagine being trapped in a situation where your safety depends on pleasing the very person who holds you captive. At first, you might resist, but as time passes, you begin to see them differently. You start to understand their struggles, feel sympathy for them, and maybe even defend them. Sounds impossible? This is the eerie reality of Stockholm Syndrome, a psychological response where hostages or abuse victims develop feelings of loyalty, even affection, toward their captors. But how does this happen? Could your mind really be tricked into loving someone who hurts you? Stockholm Syndrome is not just a concept from crime stories and Hollywood films. It's a psychological phenomenon backed by science. It challenges everything we think we know about love, fear, and survival. The human brain is wired to protect itself, but sometimes the way it adapts is more shocking than we expect. To understand why this happens, we need to look at the famous bank robbery that first brought this disturbing effect to light. The term Stockholm Syndrome was first used in 1973 after a six-day bank robbery in Stockholm, Sweden. A group of armed criminals took four bank employees hostage, keeping them locked inside a vault with little food or water. Instead of hating their captors, the hostages started forming emotional bonds with them. They even defended them in court after they were rescued. Psychologists were baffled. Why would victims feel loyalty toward those who endangered their lives? The answer lies in our brain's survival mechanism. When faced with extreme fear, the body releases stress hormones that push us into fight, flight, or freeze mode. But when escape isn't an option, the brain takes a different route, bonding with the aggressor. It's a way to reduce harm, to stay alive. And in the process, emotions become confused. Fear and gratitude mix, and victims start to feel like they owe their captors for small acts of kindness. It has been observed in many famous cases. Perhaps the most well-known is Patty Hearst, the heiress who was kidnapped in 1974 by a radical group called the Symbionese Liberation Army. Initially terrified, Patty later joined the group, participated in crimes, and even defended her captors in public. When she was finally rescued, she claimed she had been brainwashed. But was it really brainwashing? Or was it Stockholm Syndrome? Another example is J.C. Dugard, who was kidnapped at age 11 and held captive for 18 years. Over time, she stopped trying to escape, even growing emotionally attached to her kidnapper. It wasn't until her rescue that she fully understood the extent of the psychological manipulation she had endured. Stockholm Syndrome isn't just about being held hostage. It can happen in abusive relationships, cults, and even workplaces with controlling bosses. But what exactly causes it? Researchers believe that three key factors are at play. Perceived threat. The victim must feel that their life is in danger, which triggers intense fear. Small acts of kindness. The captor shows occasional compassion, like giving food or engaging in conversation, creating a sense of hope. Isolation from outside perspectives. Without contact from friends, family, or authorities, the victim starts to rely only on their captor for emotional needs. This psychological trickery makes it incredibly difficult for victims to see their situation clearly. Instead of recognizing abuse, they start justifying it. The more time they spend with their captor, the stronger this emotional connection becomes. Escaping the physical grasp of a captor is one thing, escaping the emotional hold is another. Many victims of Stockholm Syndrome struggle long after they are freed. The emotional attachment doesn't vanish overnight, and some even feel guilt for betraying their captor. Therapists use cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, to help survivors recognize what happened to them. They work to reframe the experience, helping victims separate fear-driven attachment from genuine emotion. In some cases, therapy can take years, as the brain has rewired itself to associate safety with the abuser. Experts emphasize that education is key. By understanding how Stockholm Syndrome works, people can recognize the warning signs, whether in relationships, workplaces, or even political movements where loyalty is manipulated through fear. Most of us believe we would never sympathize with an abuser or captor, but psychology proves otherwise. When the mind is pushed to its limits, survival takes priority over logic. Stockholm Syndrome isn't a weakness. It's a testament to the brain's ability to adapt, even in terrifying situations. So, could you love someone who hurts you? If psychology has taught us anything, It's that the answer isn't as simple as we think.